Okay, when I'm measuring, I'm going to be looking for placing my pencil right on one edge of the bottle, placing my fingertips on the other, bringing that over to my paper and marking it off. All right, the goal here then is we're going to be doing everything freehand, so we want to try to kind of sketch out those two parallel lines. Again, I'm not going to know if these are good until I have something on the paper to stare at. If they look crooked, if they look misshapen, this is the time for me to make some adjustments. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the entire height of this bottle. Top of the pencil to the top, fingertips to the bottom. I'm going to provide a photograph for the people in class. The image is also in the assignments for you as well. If you need to, you can always use the image on the screen, but I recommend those of you at home, once I'm done with this, then you can go into assignments, open up the picture, open up it as large as you can on your screen, and then start executing the measuring part. That way you'll have a consistent view of what it looks like. I then measured the body of the bottle, this bottom portion. I'm now going to go into what I'm calling the hips of this bottle. I'm going to measure the entire hips. For me, that's just an easier way to kind of do it. I'm going to mark that off, and I could measure this small distance, although it gets tough, but if I feel good about this, all I have to do is really kind of approximate a midway point, all right? And that will set me up for that. I'll measure the cap at this point. Try to get that over here and mark that off. At this point, it looks like I didn't get something right over here, so I'm just going to double check my measurements, and that's something that you should do along the way. I'm going to give myself a little bit more room here and take off a little bit there so I can fit everything the way I need it. I'm going to now measure out the cap itself. All right, get that there, sort of mark that off. I'm going to look to try to make them equidistant. One thing that I also want to do is I also kind of want to come in and create a line of symmetry down the center. So with that line of symmetry, I can sort of double check how everything's looking. It's going to make it much more helpful for me later on to kind of do the rest of the drawing. So I'm going to take a look. I got my layout. I have all my measurements. I feel pretty good about them right now. Again, you're going to spend a lot more time with this. Just like last time, I'm going to start by working on the bottom, on my base, and work my way up. Before I start drawing curves, I'm going to really just kind of block out the space with some straight lines to try to make sure that these two areas in the bottom, they look symmetrical to me. So I'm going to try to focus just on those empty spaces. Once I start feeling like I've given myself a good idea as far as the spaces go, then I'm going to start rounding off what I have. And I'm going to notice that this one is a slightly curvier, slightly rounder bottom than the last one was. It goes up a little bit higher, it pinches in a little bit. So again, my goal here is a nice curve, but also that we have equal spaces on both sides. I'm sorry for the little recording button. It won't be on the video that I post. Next, I'm going to kind of leave these two lines alone. I'm going to go to my middle over here where I have my hips. For the hips, this is one of the most challenging parts of this drawing. The hips, all right, it's hard to make this curve, and it's hard to make it look the opposite way. So what I'm going to start with really is I'm going to start with straight lines. These straight lines, I'm just laying them out here so that I can get a feeling for how much space I need. And generally what people do when they make a mistake here is they make too much space on the inside. This little pinch is really not that big. You might see it's a little lopsided on the picture, ever so slightly. Your job is to try to make it as close to the picture as possible. Once you start feeling like, all right, this is pretty good, now I can start rounding that off a little bit as I feel a little bit more comfortable with it, and I start trying to make them look the same on both sides. From here, I'm going to jump up to the shoulders. Again, start with some straight lines. Try to bracket and block out the empty space so you can sort of compare both sides. trying to keep these two things equal. Think about the little pinch in for the cap, and once you start feeling like you have two equal symmetrical sides, here's when I would start trying to sort of round things off. All right, and this one is the trickiest part. It does require that you probably have to go back in, clean up, erase, adjust, but your goal again is perfect symmetry and the shape, the form, that it looks equal on both sides. Again, you're going to go back a few times on that. I'm kind of rushing over here. Really quickly checking my own work. I see that this looks a little pinched up, a little high on this side. I'm just going to kind of try to adjust as I go. Once I get up to the cap, again, I want to try to make sure it's equal both sides. I want to see that there is a little bit of a wedge, a little negative space here on both sides. So I want to kind of get that to start with. I want to make sure I get the roundness of that cap and that it's equal on both sides. I already see mine dipping a little bit on one side, so I want to kind of raise this side up a little bit, make sure that it matches. All right, we also have this sort of ellipse, the oval at the top. Over here, I'm going to start sort of marking that off and working on that little bit of an oval, knowing that the cap gets a little rounder besides that. Down here at the bottom part of this cap, we also have that little smiley face, that little line. It touches the bottom of my measurement. The cap, we should have measured it out. It's very square on the sides. It is round on the top and the bottom. And we're going to work on those little ellipses as we're working. Here, I'm going to try to divide this since there's a little separation. And I'm just going to try to make sure that I create a parallel sort of arc there, a little oval, half oval to kind of do that. Right now, after just a few minutes, I've already kind of laid out the entire bottle. This is the point in the drawing where you should start self-correcting. You should look at your measurements. If your bottle looks too wide or too tall or something's wrong there, double check and change it before you invest a lot of time. If there are now issues with the symmetry, this is the place where you should go back in. I see a lot of symmetrical issues with my cap. I got to go back there and I got to correct them. All right, and that's the art part. This has been about 7.5 minutes, and though I might have the drawing out on paper, I still have, I think, a lot of work to do as far as like cleaning it up, making sure that my parts are even and that my symmetry is good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let you guys start on this today. I'm going to give you the remainder of this period. We're going to give you plenty of time on Monday, and we probably will review it and submit it on Tuesday. I've left the requirement due date for this Tuesday. I'm going to give you plenty of time in class that this should not have to be homework. You're obviously welcome to work on it at home, but you do not have to. You could just work on it during class. Our goal here today is that you get started, you ask questions as necessary, and like I said, this video that I just sort of finished, I'm going to stop it here without totally getting my bottle done. I'm going to post it to YouTube, and it will be up in our chat, hopefully before the end of the period, but we also have to see how that goes. I'm just going to stop recording right now. This was Mr. B, and this is drawing our second